Secretary of State is in Colombia as part of his ongoing tour of Latin America. The president of Peru survives impeachment proceedings. And thousands march in Thailand to demand sweeping reforms. Hello and welcome to TeleSUR. I'm Doris Polo in Quito, Ecuador, and this is from the South. We begin with news that U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has arrived in Colombia for an official visit. Pompeo's latest tour started in South America on Thursday when he visited Suriname and Guyana. He then traveled to Brazil before heading to Colombia. Pompeo is scheduled to meet with President Ivan Duque at the presidential palace to discuss topics including the situation in Venezuela and the supposed war on drugs being led by the Colombian government. Meanwhile, the Venezuelan government has denounced Pompeo's Latin tour as part of an ongoing strategy to destabilize the nation. Well, protesters gathered in Brazil on Friday against the visit of the U.S. Secretary of State. Demonstrators mobilized in front of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, calling Pompeo's meeting with Venezuelan migrants a cynical move. Meanwhile, Workers' Party President Leite Hoffmann pointed out that the administration of President Jair Bolsonaro has once again shown its submission to the policies of the United States. And on Friday, China denounced that U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is seeking to disrupt cooperation between China and Latin American countries. Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin stated that Pompeo is seeking to interfere in trade relations between the Asian giant and South American nations by spreading defamatory statements against the country. The official also stressed that China will not force any nation to choose between one option or another regarding its alliances, nor issue threats against any country for its ties with others, unlike the U.S.
Today I say keep going.
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro also denounced the attempts made by U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to conspire with neighboring governments to attack the Bolivarian Republic.
Mike Pompeo is on a warmongering tour against Venezuela, but it has backfired on him. Mike Pompeo has failed in all his attempts to align the governments of the continent in a war against Venezuela. Mike Pompeo is calling for a war against Venezuela, but he has failed. He has failed, and the Bolivarian National Militia and our people and our Bolivarian armed forces must be increasingly ready, better prepared to defend peace, territorial integrity, and the right of our nation to development. The battered, macabre terrorist, coup-plotting right wing and the U.S. government have activated orders and plans to seriously restore the peace in Venezuela. I denounce this to the world. In the next few days, as we always do, we will present conclusive evidence. So, 4,512,000 militiamen and militia women, listen up, be alert, 1,000 eyes.
President Maduro also announced that conclusive evidence regarding the detained U.S. spy and his work would soon be made available.
To act as we have acted, we have recently captured, I have to say it today, a gringo spy. There they are. I don't know if they have shown the evidence. A member of the CIA, a gringo spy, member of the CIA. He is convicted and has confessed, and we captured him with all the evidence of espionage activities, to sabotage the refineries of the country, to sabotage electrical targets. He had participated in the Iraq War, and he was under the CIA command in Iraq. And how did we capture him? Following information from SP3, from the people. From the people, that's how we captured him.
Staying in Venezuela, the Bolivarian government recently denounced that accusations of human rights abuses are being used as a means to question the credibility of the upcoming parliamentary elections.
This week, a human rights report sponsored by the Lima Group was published. The organization of right-wing government slanderers of the Venezuelan Revolution promoted this report, which is being called a ghost document, filled with inaccuracies and mistakes. Caracas rejected this report while validating its joint work with the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights, with whom it collaborates regularly.
This document lacks of credibility, and it is an act of propaganda against our country, and we will respond to it with the law, with justice. In Venezuela, whoever violates human rights will be condemned, punished, and the public ministry has proved it will do so. There are people condemned, investigated, prosecuted.
Analysts think that this report is written and published within the framework of the political and economic pressure plan against Venezuela, aiming at the December parliamentary elections through a strategy of international coercion.
The problem of this report is that it seems more than clear the purpose of using it as a legal excuse under the United Nations jurisdiction to initiate criminal actions against the Venezuelan leadership. It is not the first attempt. Its credibility is questionable.
The facts show that this report will be used as a trigger to strengthen the strategy of the United States and the OAS, which is seeking to sabotage the parliamentary elections due to the failure of the opposition sectors that gather around Guaidó. That's how the purpose is crystal clear. The U.S. interests are actively working to discredit the poll in December.
More and more countries know the fragility of the elections of the National Assembly, scheduled by Maduro for December 6th of this year, will be no fair nor free.
Sectors of the opposition and Chavismo called the European Union to accompany the process. However, the bloc insists that Venezuela change its legal instances.
Strong support from ICG minister to continue working for a negotiated political solution for Venezuela crisis. The celebration of free and fair elections is key. Only mere change to the conditions and the schedule could allow the deployment of an EU electoral observation mission.
As in other occasions of Pulseo International, a bloc that supports the self-determination of Venezuela with China, Russia, and other allied governments is configured.
These elections must be respected and supported by the international community. The government of China always supports and will continue to support the efforts of the government and the opposition of Venezuela to resolve the difference through dialogues and consultations.
The maximum pressure strategy announced by the United States includes various destabilization formulations and is preceded by the November U.S. presidential election.
This period before the elections is a very dangerous time when we can expect political pressures, economic pressures, increased psychological warfare, and also military operations, all regular and irregular, against the Bolivarian revolution.
Internally, the different political sectors already registered with the National Electoral Council have said that the elections will be held inevitably on next December 6. Leonel Retamal Muñoz, TeleSUR, Caracas, Venezuela.
With that, we have more stories coming up, so don't go away. Welcome back. The president of Peru survived an impeachment vote late on Friday. Martin Vizcarra was accused by members of Congress of inciting aides to lie to anti-graft investigators. This, in turn, led to the impeachment proceedings. After a 10-hour debate, only 32 legislators voted for his dismissal, while 78 voted against and 15 abstained.
In the last 8 days, we have put aside all the people who are in bad financial situation, who have businesses collapsing and debts for medical clinics, and who have health problems. We have put them aside for 8 days because of everything that has happened this week and because of what we have done as authorities. What we have to do from now is to resume the work based on an agenda in favor of the people.
Bolivia's de facto government removed public prosecutor Jose Maria Cabrera from office on Friday via presidential decree. The announcement came after Cabrera chastised Interior Minister Arturo Murillo for privatizing the state power company. Attorney Alberto Javier Morales Vargas has been named as the new head of the Public Prosecutor's Office. Nonetheless, Cabrera said the move violates the Constitution by designating a new authority who has not been formally sworn in as such. He says he will remain in charge of the prosecutor's office until the formal handover of duties is respected. In other news, Guatemalan President Alejandro Giammattei has tested positive for COVID-19. In revealing the news, Giammattei said he would continue his work from home while self-isolating. He also ordered all members of his cabinet and the Vice President, Guillermo Castillo, to be tested for the virus. Meanwhile, the Minister of Culture also contracted the novel coronavirus. Guatemala has so far reported over 83,000 COVID-19 cases and more than 3,000 deaths. Libyan military leader Marshal Khalifa Haftar has agreed to lift the months-long blockade on oil fields and ports which were under the control of the Libyan National Army.
We have decided to resume oil production and exports under certain conditions and with necessary measures that will guarantee a fair distribution of revenues and that they will not be used to support terrorism.
Hundreds of people gathered in Morocco's capital, Rabat, on Friday to protest against the normalization of ties between Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain.
This event, organized by Moroccan coalitions in support of the Palestinian people, is there to affirm the position of the Moroccan people on all the agreements of betrayal and normalization that the Emirates and Bahrain have concluded. From this place, in front of the Moroccan parliament, we send a letter of support to the Palestinian people, a letter of attachment to the freedom of Al-Aqsa and Jerusalem. And the most shouted slogan I have heard today is, Moroccans will never forget Al-Aqsa and Jerusalem. We are here to remind the Moroccan state and the whole world that we consider that the Palestinian cause is also ours, and we have made sacrifices, and Moroccans have given their lives for the Palestinian cause.
South African health authorities reported over 2,000 new COVID-19 cases on Friday, taking the total number to over 657,000. The country's Minister of Health noted that the number of COVID-19 tests conducted in the country has surpassed 4 million, making South Africa the country to have conducted the most tests on the continent by far. Meanwhile, 85 people have died from COVID-19 in the last 24 hours, pushing the total number of fatalities to over 15,800. South Africa ranks 9th in the world in terms of the total number of coronavirus cases confirmed. We're taking one last break, but stay with us. Welcome back. Thousands protested in Thailand's capital, Bangkok, demanding political reforms. The protesters have been taking to the streets since July, calling for the resignation of Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha and a complete overhaul of the government. The demonstrators defied a ban on public gatherings due to the COVID-19 pandemic. They are also calling for fresh elections and a new constitution.
Now we are fighting with so-called dictatorship government that claim themselves to be democratic, and we actually see that is not true. So we want the reform, the political reform.
Protests also took place in the Bahraini capital, Manana. Participants in the demonstration carried banners condemning the normalization of ties with Israel and in support of the Palestinian cause. Bahrain is the second Gulf country to normalize its ties with Israel in less than a month following the UAE. Staying in the Middle East, Iranian health authorities confirmed over 2,800 new COVID-19 cases on Friday, taking the total number of positives to over 400,000. Ministry of Health spokeswoman Seema Lari also reported 176 new COVID-19 related deaths, pushing fatalities to more than 23,000. Meanwhile, the number of people who have fully recovered stands at more than 350,000, while over 38,000 patients are in a critical condition. While health authorities in the Netherlands have decided to reimpose COVID-19 restrictions in order to tackle a recent spike in coronavirus cases.
The coronavirus is making a comeback, and therefore the outbreak management team had to urgently interfere with the measures to reduce numbers of infected in different regions. To make this point very clear, yesterday we had 1,750 new cases. With a 1.4% R rate, the new infections could rise in 3 weeks to 10,000 per day. You don't have to be an expert in virology to understand what such a situation can do to the health system. We can't do that to our healthcare and the people who work in healthcare. In the 6 risk regions, the bars and cafes will have to stop with music at midnight and close at 1 a.m. The second measure is related to the size of the gatherings. Gatherings of more than 50 people will now have to apply for a permit from local authorities.
Spain has issued new COVID-19 restrictions in Madrid, limiting travel from 37 zones within the capital and limiting gatherings to 6 people as cases rise significantly.
There are 37 areas throughout the community of Madrid where the incidence is much higher. In fact, we are talking about 1,000 infections per 100,000 inhabitants, a very serious figure, and therefore we are obliged to take a series of measures on these specific areas to contain its spread. The state of alarm must be avoided at all costs. Above all, the confinement must be removed. An economic disaster must be avoided. Confinement and the state of alarm is the economic disaster, and we have to avoid it by all means.
On Friday, Madrid reported more than 5,000 new coronavirus cases. The city has a rate of transmission 6 times higher than the national average, which is Europe's highest. According to the Ministry of Health, the country has so far confirmed more than 654,000 COVID-19 cases and over 34,000 deaths. Following an official visit to the Czech Republic on Friday, the Greek foreign minister called for dialogue with Turkish authorities to resolve the current tension over oil drilling activities in the eastern Mediterranean.
We believe that a dialogue should start and that international law should not be violated. Of course, in this area, no one should try to prevail by force. Greece is always open to a dialogue with Turkey regarding coastal waters in the exclusive economic zone, provided that Turkey stops its provocative acts in the area.
Meanwhile, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has also expressed his government's willingness to enter into a political dialogue to address the situation in the eastern Mediterranean.
We have no problem on the issue of meeting Mitsotakis, but what we will discuss, under which framework will the discussion take place, that is important. As long as there is goodwill, we are ready to meet, whether it's in third countries or via video conference. There would be no question of us evading discussions. However, if the Greek president goes to the island and engages in a show of force, then we would display an even greater show of force.
U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the second woman to be appointed to the Supreme Court, passed away at the age of 87 in Washington, D.C. on Friday. Judge Ginsburg was appointed to the legislative body by President Bill Clinton in 1993, where she served for more than 27 years. She was known as an advocate for women's rights and for the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment. Her death, while still serving on the court, has created a rare election year opportunity for President Donald Trump to nominate a Republican replacement. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I am Doris Polo. Thank you for watching.